This is the Horse Radio Network. This is episode 405 of Horse Tip Daily, a different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you one day at a time. Today's tip is sponsored by FeedXL. Visit them at feedxl.com. Enjoy today's tip. Well, this is Glenn the Geek from Lexington, Kentucky, and welcome back to Horse Tip Daily. Well, today we have back with us Dr. Nerida Richards, and she is the founder of our sponsor today, FeedXL. She's a doctor of nutrition and equine nutrition, and she joins us all the way from Australia. She's done many tips with us before. You can find them just by going to Horse Tip Daily and searching under Tips by Expert on the left-hand side of the page, and you can pull up Dr. Nerida Richards. She's a lot of fun to speak with, and I think it's just filled with information. We have two different doctors now that give us tips on nutrition, and it is interesting to hear both opinions, I find. Sometimes they vary a little bit, sometimes they're the same, but it does give you varied opinions of nutrition, and not every doctor agrees on everything. So that's why we bring you varied opinions, is so that you can choose what it is that you want to believe or what you want to try. So this is Dr. Nerida Richards, and as I said, she's the founder of FeedXL. FeedXL is that website we've been talking about for a long time, where you can go to see if you're feeding your horses correctly. Just take a couple minutes, put in information about your horse, put in information about what you feed your horse, from hay to grain to supplements, everything. And they have almost 2,500 different companies' products in there, and they're all broken down by each of their individual ingredients. And after you put all your information in, FeedXL spits out reports that shows you whether you're feeding your horses too much, whether you're feeding your horses too little, whether they're getting too much of one supplement or not enough of another. And it tells you how you can adjust that. So that's all done by FeedXL.com. And now here's the founder of FeedXL, Dr. Nerida Richards. Well, Dr. Richards, welcome back to Horse Tip Daily.
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
I'm good. It's always fun to speak with you. We were just talking off the air a little bit about accents and how everybody likes the Australian accent. Guys like your accent, and girls certainly like the Australian guy accent.
I just hope that people can understand me. I tend to talk quite fast as well. So
yeah, you are a speedy talker, but I think that comes from you're a little bit like me with that, and I have to force myself to slow down. I met the coolest guy I wanted to mention to you earlier in one of the episodes at the World Equestrian Games. I didn't know if you've ever heard of Guy McLean.
I have heard of Guy McLean. I love Guy McLean. He's great.
Well, he was over here. I got to spend almost every night with him at the where we were recording our shows every night during the World Equestrian Games. I got to spend a lot of time with Guy. Got to see his show several times. What cool guy. He's an entertainer.
Yep.
And he does some amazing horses or things with those horses of his.
I know. They're incredible, aren't they?
Yep.
Absolutely. We have a horse exhibition over here every second year called Equitana in November. So, and I have to say, he's the only person that I actually make a point of going to see, because I'm working there all the time, so I don't get to see a lot of the performances. But Guy's the only one who I actually make a point to make sure I get around to see.
And he works with Australian stock horses.
Yes.
Which I guess are sort of a combination, thoroughbred, quarter horse, sort of like?
I mean,
I was trying to compare it to a...
bred from, yep. Yeah, they still have, we still have a lot of foundation mares, as far as I understand, coming into the stock horse breed, and a lot of them are thoroughbred. And there is a lot of quarter horse blood in there, and there's probably a lot of our Whaler blood perhaps, but I probably shouldn't talk too much because I don't know a whole lot about the actual breeding. I'm terrible with equine genetics, so but I do love I love my Australian stock horses. I have one, and she's just gone and gotten in foal to a gorgeous stallion, so I'll have two in about 11 months.
Well, if his are any indication, they are very smart, very trainable horses.
Yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful animals. I love my little mare.
I'll let you go. I'll let you get to your tip. But one thing he does that blew me away, and he was doing this in a small, his area that he had to work in was small. It was a round pen size. And he would just get the one horse to lay down on the ground, and the other three horses, while he was standing on top of two of them, would sidestep over the horse that was laying on the ground.
Yeah, incredible, huh?
I can't think of any other horse that would do that. I mean, it just
No,
talk about getting his horses to trust him. It
I
just is
know.
amazing.
It's beautiful to see. That's why I love watching it. It's just so nice to watch a horse that trusts someone so much and also knows exactly what is being asked of them. Unlike my poor horses often.
Well,
It's like, what do you want me to do?
He's going to do very well here in the United States. He caused quite a stir. People absolutely loved him. He made a ton of good contacts at the wagon. I think he's going to do very well on his tour here. So
No, great.
I'm excited for him.
That's really good.
Sorry, I just had to bring that up and ask if you knew him because he's cool.
Yeah, no, I don't know him, but I've certainly seen him work with his horses quite a bit.
All right, cool. So we're not talking about Australian stock horses today, then?
No, I'd love to, but no.
Okay.
So we're going to have a look at equine gastric ulcers today because it's such a massive problem for so many horses. But I just want to have a look at a few feeding management things you can do to reduce their incidence and their severity in horses, mainly their incidence. So there is a few things that you can do to hopefully prevent them in your horses. So I don't think we really need to talk about what gastric ulcers are. Most people are quite familiar with them,
Yep.
but basically they're a lesion in the stomach of the horse, and generally they're in the upper region of the stomach because the upper region, the stomach is divided into two sections. So the upper region is a non-glandular region, so it's not actually, it doesn't have any secretions to actually protect it from the stomach acid that is produced in the lower portion of the stomach. So it's quite prone to injury, I guess, from the acid if the acid gets up to that area. So the things that you can do to reduce the incidence of ulcers pretty much focus around stopping that injury of that upper part of the stomach occurring. Now there's been a really neat study done in Western Australia, here in Australia, looking at why ulcers occur, and they've found things like the longer a horse is in training, the more likely it is to have ulcers. This is in thoroughbreds, if the horses were exercised on a track on the property that the horses are actually housed on, their incidence was a lot lower than horses that were actually transported to a track to be trained. Horses that didn't get any turnout time, and particularly turnout time with paddock buddies, were more prone to having ulcers. Like horses that were stressed. And one really neat thing they found, or one kind of quirky thing I guess they found, was that talkback radio in the stables, and I imagine it would mostly be the racing radio, so something that would remind the horses of being actually at the races, had a correlation to the incidence of ulcers in horses. So if that talkback radio was on, yeah, the horses in those stables had more ulcers than horses that.
I wonder if
were
they get
in
ulcers
stables
listening to me.
What? Do you want me to try it?
Yeah, so check that and see. Maybe not.
We could do a study on that. Yeah.
My wife gets ulcers listening to me, so I guess that could happen.
We'll feed her some alfalfa hay, see how she goes. Dear. So all those little things sort of help us identify feeding management practices you can employ to help your horse reduce its risk of getting ulcers. So the first thing, and I think this is probably one of the most important things, is don't exercise horses on an empty stomach. And I know everyone's had their mother say to them, don't go swimming, for half an hour after you've eaten food, because you'll get a cramp and sink to the bottom of the pool and you'll drown.
Right, exactly.
I know my mum used to say that to me, and I still don't. I still go, oh, I've just eaten, I can't go and swim. But horses aren't supposed to have an empty stomach. I mean, they're continuous feeders, unlike us who are meal feeders. So if you think about it, a horse's stomach really should never be empty. And, if they're in the wild and suddenly a prey animal comes upon them and chases them to kill them and eat them, they're not going to go, hang on a minute, I've just eaten. I can't run right now. Can we wait to have the chase in about 30 minutes? They've just got to get up and run. They don't have that luxury. So they have to be able to run on a full stomach. And running them on an empty stomach, or exercising them on an empty stomach, is actually likely to be quite harmful. There was a really, really neat study done in Europe, and I can probably tell you who the authors were. Lorenzo Figueras, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, in 2002, they actually put a pH meter in the very top part of a horse's stomach, and then tracked or logged the pH change as the horses exercised. And they found that walking there was no change in pH, but as the horse got up towards galloping, because of the movement in the horse and the squashing of the stomach, the pH in that upper region of the stomach, which really shouldn't go too low, was getting down into really, really acidic regions. So it was showing that on an empty stomach, that acid from the bottom part of the stomach actually gets pushed up and covers the top part of the stomach, which has absolutely no protection from it. And you really don't want that to be happening. So by giving them a small meal, and I would suggest using something like alfalfa hay prior to. So this is if your horse has been boxed overnight and it's finished its night feed, and hasn't had any feed before you exercise it. A small meal of alfalfa prior to going out and exercising is just going to give it that bit of feed in there to stop that acid from being able to so easily splash and move around. And plus you get the benefit of the saliva that's produced when the horse actually chews, the hay that provides a buffer, and with alfalfa it actually has quite good buffering capacity as well, just itself. So you sort of get a double buffering effect there. Now, with the study in Western Australia that showed that horses that were trained at the track versus horses that were trained horses that lived at the track versus horses that were trucked in or floated in to a track to train, how they had a different incidence of ulcers. I would take from that, I mean, maybe the stress of travelling, but also the time it took for those horses to finish training and then get all the way back to their stables.
So they had more ulcers?
Fed. They had more ulcers.
Okay.
The ones that were travelling had a much higher incidence of ulcers than ones that didn't. So there's that real time lag between when they finish their training and when they're actually being fed for the first time that day. So the poor old stomach is, they've just run on an empty stomach, so they've had all this acid splashing around on that top region of the stomach. And then there's nothing sort of going down, so no chewing, no salivation, nothing to sort of, help wash that acid off the top part, I guess, and provide the buffering protection that you get with chewing and saliva. So if you do train your horses away from where they're going to get fed, take some food with you so that they can have a small feed before they actually hop back on the truck or back in the trailer and come home. And again, just something as simple as just a small piece of alfalfa hay would, and in fact hay is probably better because they have to chew it more and they salivate more, is likely going to help just reduce that risk of ulcers forming.
Huh. Okay.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, that is interesting. I wouldn't have correlated it. I wouldn't have put those together.
No, it was just that study had sort of shown that. And it, stress is a massive risk factor for ulcers, and we do know that some horses do find travelling quite stressful. So it may just be the stress, but when you think about it, or when I think about it logically, if there's an empty stomach, just filling it up with something is going to have a big positive impact. The next one you can do is provide turnout time. So if your horses are boxed primarily, getting them out onto pasture and getting them out with a paddock mate where possible is going to reduce, well, first of all, it'll reduce their stress level. And it's also going to provide your horse with an opportunity to graze. So when they're grazing, they're continuously producing saliva as they're chewing, and that sort of helps to buffer and protect the stomach as well. So any amount of turnout time you can give horses during the day is going to help. And the last one is providing regular small meals and constant access to hay. So the more you can get a horse to chew and salivate over the period of the day, the less time the stomach is going to be there without receiving any buffering protection. Because horses are grazers and they're supposed to be eating constantly, their stomach is constantly producing acid. It never actually stops, unlike in us where when we see food or think of food, our brain and body goes, oh, we must be about to eat, and it'll start producing acid then. But then once we're finished eating, it shuts it off. So we're very different to horses. So if horses are only eating in, say, 2 set meals a day for maybe, 2-3 hours of the day that they're eating, there's an awful lot of time in that day that stomach is producing acid, and there's no saliva and food going down to provide buffering protection.
Which makes sense. I mean, that's why they're grazers. That's why
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this problem is likely because we've changed their feeding patterns so dramatically. In saying that, there is a lot of stables who do provide constant access to hay and do separate their feeds up into small meals, and they still have problems with gastric ulcers. So it's not the be-all and end-all solution, just feeding them more, but it's certainly, if you're not doing it, it's certainly something that you should be doing. And also make sure it's hay that they actually want to eat. I do see horses in boxes that have got massive bags of hay, but they're not eating it because they probably don't really particularly like the type of hay that it is. So it has to be, it's no good just putting it there. It has to be something that they are actually going to eat. So having a combination of different hays, or, making sure that it's just good quality hay that they do like, will help. And of course, separating out their hard feeds as well during the day is going to make sure that they eat more frequently as well.
Sounds like it's correct to me. It makes perfect sense.
Mostly it's, I guess, just logical when you think about how a horse has evolved, what they're supposed to be eating, and how, running on the full stomach and things like that. If you can sort of keep it as close to what they evolved to do, hopefully it will cause a lot less problems for them.
All right, and of course, people can check out your website to see if your horses are eating correctly, too much of this, too little of that, and they can go to FeedXL.com and just plug some information in there. It's a couple-step program, doesn't take long at all, and the results are very enlightening and quite extensive. It goes through a whole bunch of different things, and it definitely is worth checking out at FeedXL.com. Thank you, Dr. Richards. We appreciate you being here on a regular basis with us, and I think people are getting a lot out of it.
No worries, Glenn. I find it a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks once again to Dr. Richards for joining us here on Horse Tip Daily. We certainly appreciate it. And, of course, you can listen to all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com. We have 8 of them, and soon to be 9. We have an announcement coming up of a new show that's going to be joining the lineup, and we hope that you'll take a listen to that as well. And, of course, I wanted to also mention that if you own a company and you would like to take a look at advertising on horses, or on the Horse Radio Network, rather, you can do so just by contacting me at Glenn with 2 N's at horseradionetwork.com. We'll be back again tomorrow with another new expert and a different horse tip. Until then, stay safe, everyone.
The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.